Hello and welcome to the Plant Paradigm Podcast, where we have inspiring conversations with amazing people from all around the world and look for ways to create a clean, green and sustainable system for us, the planet and all beings. I'm your host, Tom Simak, a fellow plant eater who strives to optimize every living ecosystem, passionate about looking after this beautiful floating rock we call home and all the lovely creatures that dwell among it. What a lovely start to the new year. I mean, if you're in Australia, the summer is absolutely amazing right now. And just a friendly reminder to join the conversation on Instagram at plant.paradigm, where I'll be posting snippets, little tips and tricks, and just continuing the conversation that we have today here right now. For this episode, we're joined by Rafael Duarte. Rafael is an award-winning photographer, documentarist, and journalist. He uses photography to document nature's riches, evoke reflections on human behaviour, and foster preservation of natural, historical, and cultural heritages on Earth. His work has been exhibited in galleries in France, England, Spain, and Brazil. Also, he has worked in partnership with domestic and international media outlets such as Nat Geo, Vice, Go Outside, Digital Photographer, and O Globo. His films have been awarded worldwide, and his most recent film, Beyond Dreams, won an award at the Four Seasons Film Festival, which you can watch on Amazon Prime. He is the founder of Miramundos Expedition Team, host of the Reconnector podcast, and the director of Bambaleo, a production company and publishing house. While we only touch on climate change and the effect it's had on communities a little bit, I really wanted to explore his craft of photography and videography, and how he captures these moments and events in ways that makes a lasting and powerful impression on individuals. I think creative arts is really important right now because effectively communicating what's happening in our world right now is the only way we can instill change within people and band together towards a common cause. That being said, I hope you enjoyed this conversation about creativity, storytelling, and global issues. I'll see you on the other side. Rafael, welcome to the podcast. How are you going?
Great, Tom. Thanks for having me.
Perfect. What's been happening recently in your world?
Well, I've been working a lot and also changing a lot of diapers.
Yes. What kind of work are you getting up to?
Well, I have a few going on. I'm editing a book. I'm on pre-production for my new documentary film, and I've been freelancing here in Switzerland on with photography and filmmaking, and just organizing in a bunch of projects for 2021. So a lot of things going on at the moment, thankfully.
So you got Benjamin, who's a month and a half old, and you're just stacking on project after project. How are you balancing being a dad and doing everything else?
Well, that's quite new for me, but since I work from home, I think it's a really real privilege because I can give him a lot of attention. I don't have like a strict time. I can work extra hours like anytime, and I can still be present. So, of course, the first month I was 100%, but now I'm able to get back to work slowly, and I don't know like how this still how this is going to happen like in real life, especially with the travels. But thankfully, I like for this first one, I have the support of my step parents here, which my parents-in-law, which are helping out. So it's going to be fine for the moment. We'll see what's going to happen next.
Yeah, for sure. It's always nice finding that balance, and it changes over time, which is totally okay. Can you divulge what this new doco it is that you're working on, or is it still a secret?
No, it's totally not a secret. My last book was this photographic research of unique views of the city of Rio de Janeiro, where I'm from. it was a long project, like 10-year long project, documenting the landscape of the city and get like climbing mountains and going top on top of monuments and visiting pretty much all the parks in the city, and it was quite a journey. Like, and this the film now it's gonna show like a little behind the scenes in a way, but the focus is gonna be on characters on 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 possible characters that I have met that are people that interact with the city in such unique ways in their daily basis because of the work, because of their sports they practice. And for me, it was a unique moment during the book to also to have like a little glimpse, a little feel of that moment. But
Mm.
they have that every day, like in their jobs. So I'm gonna have workers from monuments in town. I'm going to have athletes uh, that train like every day on different parks. I'm going to have biologists, like a researcher that studies the birds on the islands. So it's going to be like this beautiful film about landscape, but through the eyes of regular and unknown people.
Sounds amazing. And you know what? Speaking of climbing mountains, you guys actually recently won the an award at Four Seasons Film Festival. How do you feel about that? Congrats.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'm pretty happy about that. The only low side on that was that I was about to go to London to see that myself and to catch, maybe eventually, as you know, and I catch the award like on my hands, like. But since COVID came, I couldn't go. So, but yeah, I'm really happy. Like this film Beyond Dreams is my latest documentary. We just finished the world tour on the international film festivals.
Mhm.
It's been quite successful. The film has been screened in over 20 festivals around the world,
Wow.
and it was awarded 6 times. And yeah, I'm just proud of it. And it just came out in the US on UK on Amazon Prime, and it's gonna be released in Brazil the second semester. So yeah, I'm really proud of it.
That's amazing. Did you guys expect all those awards when you filmed it? Like, you know, when you see
Mm.
something and you're like so proud of it, you're like, this is going to go somewhere. Did you have any kind of glimpse of that feeling?
I try not to think that. Of course, when I want to do a work, I want to do my best on it. I want to do something special out of it. But I don't do anything to get awards or to. I don't think on that. I don't have that in mind. Uh, of course, when you apply to film festivals, you can have a chance. You do have a chance to get an award, but to be really uh, honest here, when I apply for a film festival, I really cheer to get accepted. I really want to be on it. I want people to see my film. That's what excites me the most. That's like the possibility of having people to see my film on a big screen. That's like, wow, that's so special. And especially like the festivals that invite me, that I can go talk about the film. I think that's even better than an
Yeah.
award for me. Like exchange like experiences with other filmmakers, and also like have questions from audience. That's the greatest award I could have. But of course, market wise, it's really nice when we get awards and then we go sell the movie, and the distributors and on NTVs, they look at the film and see it's awarded. It's good for the product, but it's not something that I have in mind when I create something.
Right. Well, look, I did watch it yesterday with the in-laws and my partner, and it
Oh,
is on Amazon
really?
Prime as well in Australia. You did mention UK and USA, but
Oh,
it is in
really?
Australia as
It's
well. Yeah, absolutely. So Aussies can get on
nice.
it. Yeah, I did watch it, and look, it was an absolutely beautiful film. The one
I
and
didn't know. Thank you.
no,
Thanks.
no,
Thanks for.
it was great. And watching it, in preparation, I was just thinking the whole time, I'm like, did Rafael climb Everest with this guy? Like, it's an insane story. For those who don't know, Beyond Dreams, and correct me, like, if you have anything else to add, but it's a story of, is it what Roman?
Roman, yeah.
Yeah, it's a story of Roman who's come across a few challenges in his life, like getting hit by a car, getting cancer, and a few other things. And it's really a story of, more than anything, I took away the mindset and the absolute drive and following your will. And anyone who's into that whole mind, like David Goggins, Can't Hurt Me, like that kind of, you really can achieve anything. I took that more away. That was like my prominent point more than the actual mountain climbing itself, although that was insanely scary. Like some of the scenes, and spoiler alert, but when he's climbing on those ladders and then the crevices are underneath, we're just like, oh, come on. So my question, did you actually go up with him to like some point?
Yeah, I didn't go all the way to the top. My goal was to stay on base camp
Yeah.
originally, but I did climb a little bit of the Kumbu icefall, which is the
Yeah.
most dangerous place on the whole place. I didn't climb like much, maybe
Fair enough.
20% of it, or 30. But the whole, I didn't have the permit to climb Everest. I had permits to another mountain on the side of it,
Yeah.
and it's really expensive. And I also like to climb Everest. It's an almost 9,000-meter mountain. You have to have climbed like at least maybe two or more 6,000, and
Do they
that's
actually
something
look at
that
that when you apply to climb Everest? They actually look at your previous climbing experience?
they don't yet, but that's something they really should do, and maybe they are going to start. That's what the climbers want. The climbers want it to be like more strict in a professional level. It's not a professional level, but just in a responsible level. But the thing is, the Nepali government gets a lot of money from tourism. The permit from to climb Everest costs 11,000 US dollars,
Holy wow. Okay.
and that's just the tax plus all the money comes for the communities there. Tourism is a really important tool
Mhm.
it's the major tool for local economy.
Yep.
So if they create a lot of restrictions to climb Everest, uh, especially the Chinese and the Indian public, which let's say from what we observe there on the mountain, are the less experienced climbers,
Mhm.
because they're like in this tourism, let's say, uh, cluster of Everest, because people go to Everest as they were going to Paris, like a lot of people get dragged up, pulled up the mountain by strong guides and all that. It's a crazy thing when you see those big lines. It's because of that. It's because like too many people in the mountain, and slow people, and then gets to a point that's one behind the other. You cannot go across, and it just takes people get stuck in line. But going back to my job there, and also I had a job. Like I couldn't risk myself a lot. Like
Yeah.
I had to be on a safe spot, so that was perfect for me to stay in base camp, which was actually a really unique thing, because the only people that actually live a month or over a month on base camp are two kind of people among 1,000 people that are there on the
Yep.
base camp of Everest, which are the cooks and the expedition leaders,
Mhm.
because everyone else is going up and down. And like it, it was such an experience. In this mentally, it was really challenging. And of course, like to create images and to produce images and to see all that, to learn all that about the mountain and the whole dynamic on climbing such such a strategic mountain, because Everest is not the hardest mountain to climb in the world, but it's for sure a really challenging mountain on strategy, because you have to be the expedition leaders need to be really smart on reading the climate, they organizing all the team, and it's a chess game. It's beautiful to watch. And just to close the subject here really quickly, I need to mention that to be able to do that film and to film above the ice, Kumbu Icefall, we did something like was really special. Uh, Roman had Pasangdawa Sherpa, which is a local mountain guide that follows mountain climbers to the top of Everest. He had done it. He had climbed with Roman a few other times in other mountains. If I'm not wrong, it was Emadablan and Shishapangma, also in Nepal. And he's a really nice guy. He's like he's about Roman's age, but he had climbed like over 20 times Everest at that time.
Insane.
He's one time behind the world record of climbs in Everest, but official ones, because it only counts as official if you go down, if you're on top of Everest and you come down to base camp. People have to see you. You need pictures to prove that you were down base camp. And if you climb up again on the same season, it counts as two. But he had done it other times, more than once in the same season, but going down to camp 1 and camp 2 and camp 3. So had done it like other times and it didn't count.
Yeah.
So this guy is an amazing person, and he's an amazing mountain climber. And we had the idea of teaching him to photograph and to film. So we asked, hey, Padawa, on the beginning of the expedition, would you like to learn a new thing in your life? Like, would you like, instead of on the summit push, instead of carrying like extra oxygen tanks, would you like to learn how to photograph? I can teach you and film, and then you carry this small camera, and if you feel comfortable, you make a few shots for us. Of course, we were paying him for that.
Yeah.
And he said yes. So during this whole month, we're climbing during the Everest trek and doing all those days in base camp. I was giving him like this adventure workshop, like in the mountain. And he learned how to photograph. He learned how to film. And the result, people can see on the film, like what you saw, like all that footage, he was doing it. And I'm really proud of him too. And I even wrote an article last year. Was it last year or the year before? Maybe it was in 18. I wrote an article for National Geographic Brazil about this special partnership we had in the mountain.
That's so beautiful. You know, I had a question on there on my list about any stories that you have, but that's actually really cool how you can just teach someone on the fly. And look, from the outside in, you couldn't really tell that there was any kind of amateur work going on. Like the fact that, like, it looks great, but also like you're just thinking, you know, you have to focus almost all of your energy on surviving, and then, you know, you have the audacity to pick up a camera and film. It's like
totally. Yeah, totally. I can say that Padawa's work was not amateur. I can say Padawa's work was professional. As his teacher, I can say that. You know why? Just because he followed these instructions really well, and he did such amazing work. Yeah, Just a small example. Uh, Setting up the microphone on top of the camera, turning it on, only that. Like
Yeah.
how many people that you know that film with a microphone, like when they are amateur, that it's rare to people to use a professional microphone. Plus, on top of Everest, people just don't do it.
Mm.
And he was using monopod. He was with the camera stabilized. He was asking questions. He was asking Roman questions. He was interacting with him. He was working. He was doing something creatively beautiful, and I'm so proud of it. So yes, it was not amateur. It was a really good work.
Oh, for sure. And look, you got films like Beyond Dreams and other ones that have won, multiple awards, and then you've got photos in galleries all around the world. You know, it's rare to find someone who's smashing both photography and videography. Have you ever thought about picking one over the other?
Actually, that's one thing that since I got in the journalism university, there was no social media like back in the early 2000s.
What
Email
does that
was
time
the
even look like without
yeah well,
pre-social media?
email was the big thing at that time, and we knew at that time that the idea we had at that time when I was in journalism university was that one day journalists would have to do the whole work. They would have to record their own sound. They would have to record their own videos. They would have to edit their own videos. They would have to shoot their own photographs. And I thought, well, that sounds really cool because I don't want to be like spend my whole life behind a computer, like in this office. I want to see the world. I want to, and no problem of doing like multiple things. I can do that. So like since the beginning, I trained myself to, and I enjoy that possibility of being a multitask professional, and I don't say multi-talent just because talent is something that you can develop if you don't have it. And some talents I had, some talents I developed, and a lot of things I'm still learning, of course. And just for example, podcasting. I fell in love with radio when I was in university, and I the one thing I loved the most with my friends in university was to do the projects on this radio class we had, and to create programs and do funny things and explore sound. We love that. And I'm also, by the way, I'm also a musician. So I
Wow.
thought it was
Okay.
really cool. I thought it was really cool to mix music with voice and with use humor and content. I loved all that universe. And for example, during the COVID pandemic, I just created a podcast,
Mm.
an environmental podcast, which is an adventure for me because finally I feel like I'm doing radio, but today's radio. So,
Today's radio.
uh, so answering your question, like I'm not able to say that I want to choose one over the other just because it depends on the project. Depend what on what I want to do, on what kind of impact I want to create with that idea, and maybe it's going to be only photographs. Maybe it's photographs with a few texts. Maybe it's going to be only text. Maybe it's going to be movies. That's why in 2012 I quit the job I had. I had a good job. I had a car, organized life, and then I just decided to learn French and apply for French university to study French cinema. Well, cinema in France, but it's
Yeah.
majorly French cinema, which I admired a lot. So, and then I opened a company, a production company, and I started uh, doing documentaries for myself and also for the markets, for creating content for internet, for companies, for social organizations, for environmental organizations, and so on. So for brands, and so no, I cannot pick one thing. Sorry about that. Sorry, mom. Sorry, dad. I
Yeah.
cannot pick one thing. And actually I could say that that's an asset for me.
Mm.
I can actually do, and I love doing like the whole communications thing from A to Z, really.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of pros and cons to it because I'm the same musician, photographer, videographer, podcast. I'm basically ticking all your boxes there. We're one and the same. But then also at the same time, you get stuck in this hole sometime of, oh, maybe I should start working with other people more. So I don't have to do everything. And it's like outsourcing then becomes like really hard to do for people like us because we love to do everything.
Well, actually, one thing I learned when I created my company was that I I was able to, when I started doing bigger projects, I started to hire people to do things with me,
Hmm.
and that was a really good thing. And that was something that I learned, which was really good. I still do a lot of things on my own. For example, the podcast, I do everything. I do production. I do. I write the script. I record. I edit. I do pretty much everything. Only the distribution I leave it to an agency, which is a partner. But all the rest I do. But I know I learned that's not the ideal thing, just because it takes a lot of time from you, and also there are some parts on the project, some phases of a project, that there are other people that can do a better job than you. For example, in movie making, I'm not a very experienced editor. For example, I do edit, I do, but it takes me a long time to do it. So I love hiring good, experienced editors, and I learned so much from them. They give me so much good insight, and it's so good to exchange with them. So yeah, working with other people, I had no problem of working with other people, and that also makes the projects finish faster, and so we can start new things faster as well. So it's a win-win process.
Well, I'm glad you see it that way because I'm sure a lot of people who like to do everything from A to Z, I still struggle with outsourcing and stuff like that because it's the control thing, but I'm glad you got onto everything. And before, I do want to touch on a lot of the environmental stuff because that's kind of what this podcast is all about, but we haven't touched on it yet.
Yeah,
But,
sure.
but before we move on to that, I really want to ask if you've got any tips for aspiring storytellers in whatever medium you choose, whether it's photo, video, or anything that you've learned that's maybe helped you create some beautiful pieces of art.
Well, for storytellers, what I'm going to say, it's are really two basic concepts. But for people that don't really work on that, it's they should pay attention on it. Basically, two things. When you create a story, you need to think. You should think on what kind of impact you wanna create with that. What kind of message you wanna drive. What kind of emotion you want to create. So thinking about that needs to be something you have to keep in mind during the whole process. So that thing which is so important, and maybe that's the most important thing, it doesn't get lost in the process, because the process of storytelling is really creative, and you can go to many places, and sometimes you can lose your hand easily on that. So if you keep your track on that, like, oh, I need to create that kind of impact, I want to create that kind of transformation, think about that, and then you ask the right questions to have interesting answers. That's one thing. And secondly, never forget about your audience, because your audience, there are two things about the audience. First, who is the audience? And nowadays, it's really important to know where is your audience, like what kind of platform your audience is. For example, you here, you were doing your podcast. You have a special edition for YouTube, different than your final product for the podcast platforms. That's storytelling. So you have to keep in mind who's your audience and where's your audience, so you can produce the right content for the right platforms.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I totally love those two tips. And storytelling is such a beautiful craft, and it's one of those things that's really cool, and you just don't stop learning, which is really cool as well.
Totally.
Let's crack into the environment side of things. So we've got the Reconnected podcast, which is all environmental. Now, to be fair, I did try to listen to that, but I just don't speak Portuguese. I couldn't get too much out of it, but it sounded really interesting. And, because of the basis of your podcast and what it's about, I wanted to see, what are some things that or some people that you've spoken to that you've learned some really amazing things about the environment, or how to really, or some conversations that have maybe really impacted your life. What's some of your key takeaways after, all this time podcasting now?
Oh man, it just gave me the goosebumps to think about that, because this project, like, just was born like during the COVID pandemic, which is like the biggest environmental disaster that I experienced in my living time. Because this is a really, people talk about the sanitary and health issues, but this is an environmental issue, a major one, and there's more to come if we don't take care of it. There's an environmental emergency in the world. That's one thing. People can say, "Yeah, I know about it," but it's a whole different thing for people actually to make action, which is what the world needs, like action. It can be paying attention on the food you eat. It can be deciding on stuff you buy, pay attention, changing your purchase behavior, which is a huge thing. And I also learned that you cannot talk about environment if we don't talk about economics and politics. Because we can stop eating meat, we can change the supermarket that we're buying from, but if we don't like change huge things of our economy, change the energy basis, change the fuel we use in a car, change the ways we are transporting ourselves, we are not gonna be alive to see a better world. And that's for sure, because the track we are at the moment, and the Paris Agreement shows that, and also the SDGs actually help us to keep track on that. We are not on track. We're just really off track. And politics and economics are a major thing. But just to finish your question with one thing that I'd like to share with your audience, which is people interested on what they're eating and where their food come from. This is really important, because the way you buy things, that's a political act. That's a political action. What you buy, where you buy, that's being political. So
Can
be political.
Can you expand on that? Like, what do you mean? Like, if I go to Do you mean actually like buying clothes? Is that political?
But yes, totally.
Yeah.
If you buy clothes from a brand that is polluting the planet, or
Yeah.
using materials uh, that are not good for the health of the planet, yes,
Mm-hmm.
that's political. Or it can be even brands that use slave work, and like
Yeah.
in Vietnam or China. Like if you purchase from those companies, you're helping them. If you stop purchasing
Mm.
from those companies, you are giving them a hard time doing their job. So what do you prefer? You prefer, because you make money. We make money every month. It can be little, it can be a lot. So, but we need to buy something. We
Mm-hmm.
need to, like, we have to spend that somewhere. The decision you make about what you do with that money, that's political. So that's what we, because people often think, oh, I'm so little, I cannot change the world. Only the politicians and only the big players in the industry can do it. Of course they can do the huge changes, like the mass changes, but like we need to acknowledge that we have such huge power on that. The whole power we have, right? Like,
Mm.
people are using us as guinea pigs, manipulating us. Hey, buy from me, bye bye. Look how I'm nice, how I'm cool. But they're not always nice and always cool. So yeah, think about where and how you're spending your money, because you can use that towards what you believe or against it.
Yeah, it's so funny how I feel like in a way the system is set up that it's quite hard for us to tell what's also good and what's not without adequate research. Like when you look at food, and I'm just thinking food right now, organic, we know that's probably, you know, even if you're not educated on what organic really is and what that means for your body or the environment, you look at organic and you think a little bit in your head, oh, it's probably a bit better for us. And then you look $10 a kilo compared to $5 per kilo. Now that is just two choices. Now, in a world where, you know, there's this a top that's $10 and a top that's $50, and then there's a Prada top or a Gucci top that's $500. And now you've got this disconnection that more expensive doesn't mean better, because that can still use the same slaves. It can still be environmentally damaging. The pollutants can be there. So I think it's really hard, but I'm not making excuses by any means, but I just feel like it's interesting how the system's, I guess, interluded in a way that it's quite difficult to make an educated decision, because to even look into some of these companies, like, you know, and you've got a whole host of criteria. It's like, is the material ethically sourced? Are the workers paid properly? Is it shipped or transported ethically? There's so many freaking hoops we have to jump through. I wonder what the easiest way to change that to make it easier would be.
Well, yeah, the whole pricing thing is also, of course, it's a challenge, because nowadays, of course, eating healthy, uh, it can be, depending on where you are,
Mm.
uh, pricey. But that's one, like, speaking globally, that's one big myth, that eating healthy is expensive. Just
Mm.
like majorly around the world, it's so much cheaper to uh, eat healthy. So that's one thing. And about the organic thing, of course, it's just because of the scale. But think about how that producer, that person needed to make a choice. They could produce a larger scale using pesticides, or they could and get more money eventually.
Hmm.
But they chose not to. They chose to produce less, lose uh, part of their production, maybe for some bugs, or get some fruits or some vegetables that were not good enough to go to the market. They maybe they had a loss, but look at that. Look at the effort they made, and of course it's gonna go to the to the shelf a little bit more expensive, but that's a value that product has.
Mm-hmm.
And see how it's political. In many countries, many products they get subsidies from the governments.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say Venezuela with gas. In Venezuela, you can fill your car's tank with, I don't know, $2. You have a full tank. It's cheaper there only because the government it's subsidies from the government. So he wants to make cheap for the population. Here in Switzerland, the government here it subsidizes small farmers. So if you have
Cool. Yeah.
a small land with a cow in Switzerland, the government says, "Oh man, we like you. We don't want you to sell your property for someone to build another house or something. Like if you have a property with your cow, we pay you for that." So like that's political. So let's say in your city, for example, if you think buying organics in your community is expensive, why doesn't the government helps those farmers? Why they don't create a law saying, hey, if you don't
Use like
use
pesticides and all that
pesticides,
crap.
we will charge you less tax, or we will support you with transport so you don't spend money like with the whole transportation, or we pay for the transportation, or we build you something you need. So yeah, that kind, or we give you equipment for you to create your organic plantations. So yeah, of course, price can be more expensive. In those cases, the government and the laws can help that. But majorly around the world, eating healthy is it's much cheaper than eating at McDonald's.
Oh, for sure. Also, on the topic of climate change and environmentalism, what's so fascinating is the more people I'm talking to is the more I'm realizing how political it really is, and how
it is totally.
Yeah, well, absolutely. You know, when I first started this journey, and reducing meat and cycling more and do all that, I'm like, oh, I can just do this and talk to people about doing that. But then the more I get educated, it's like it's absolutely not where the action really needs to happen to make like a really big change, and doing it at a community level. And I read your story recently on Atafona that's in Rio, I think, or near there.
Yeah, the state of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Yeah.
I want you to, like, I read the story and it's pretty, I'll leave the link in the show notes so people can actually watch the video, because it actually has some pretty like frightening, I guess, shots, to be completely honest. Do you want to talk to us about what's actually going on there? Because this is a very clear example of how climate change is not affecting us in 10 years or 20 years or 50 years. It's how it's affecting us now.
Okay, so Atafona is this small town nearby the capital of the state of Rio de Janeiro, which is being drowned by the ocean for 50 years. More than 1,000 people, officially it's 500 homes have been destroyed by the sea, but locals say it was over 1,000. And it's really this place that you go and you see destruction going on every day. You go there every year, a house goes down. So basically, what's happening there? It's a junction of factors. It's a mixture of different things, mostly caused by human action. So climate change is already one aspect, right, of human action,
Mm.
which makes climate events more extreme. So let's say when there is a storm that makes the waves more savage, with high tide and all that. Of course, it's going to give more power and give the destruction is going to be faster, and you're going to see the house going down with the ocean. But in Atafona, what's happening is that they basically it's where it's a city that was built at the end on a river's mouth, on the Paraíba do Sul river's mouth. And basically, along the past decades, uh, they constructed some dams along the river. So basically, that made the water flow decrease on the river. And basically, when the river meets the ocean, the fight that was, let's say, that was even for hundreds and thousands of years. Of course, there's a little movement, geological movement that goes like this, but we would never be able to see that
Mm.
within our stupid little human life. Uh, but what happened was that the power of the river here decreased, and the ocean was the same. So now what's happening? Every wave that comes, it does this, and now it's destroying like the city, destroying, eating up like bugs. Like, and you go there, you see it. So basically, is this huge example of coastal erosion that is a problem all over the world. Actually, like it's a problem in the U.S. and Brazil is huge. There are recent studies on that shows like that it's a big thing, and of course, all over the world, people build houses close to the ocean just because it's nice, it's
Mhm.
pleasant, it's a really valuable thing to have a house nearby. But in a lot of those places, they forgot to talk about it with geologists and with environmentalists. They forgot to, and the governments just allowed to people to build things in vulnerable places. So what we're seeing in the world and in Brazil, in a lot of places, that basically like the sand, like sand dunes eating up towns as well. That's happening as well. Just people building things without uh, taking in consideration the environmental impact of that. So yeah, Atafona, please take a look at that, because that's a case. That's a case of like what we can see. We can witness a, this powerful and tragic thing of climate change.
Mm. Yeah, it is really tragic, and for us and for me when I'm reading it and looking at the images and the videos, it's shocking to see, but I it's not any sort of on any level or scale compared to what these families are actually facing to have their homes destroyed. Like that's if you really sit down for even like 5 minutes and just think, what would you do if your house right now was destroyed? It wasn't your
Yeah,
fault.
yeah, it's crazy. And also, actually, the last episode of Reconnecta was about environmental migrants. And that's a really interesting subject, because uh, more people get displaced because of, people don't know about it, but more people get displaced daily in the world because of environmental issues than internal conflicts.
Really?
And that's huge.
Oh.
That is huge. the UN already has even like an agency to look at those kind of migrants, the environmental migrants. But the thing is, in a lot of places in Brazil, for example, the specialist that I interviewed for the podcast, Erica Ramos, she told me that this is such an invisible thing in a country like Brazil, for example, just because the data we have from that are only from extreme events. So, for example, a storm hits a town and destroys 500 homes. And let's say, out of those 500 homes, let's say 300 call the police and say, "Oh, can you come and can you come to check my place, or I need help," or but there's even in an event like that, it's not everyone that contacts the public services. So the amount of data is already not enough. But let's say it was enough for that event. But slower events, such as a drought, for example. Let's say a small farmer is in a place and suddenly it cannot farm there anymore because it's so hot. The crops don't grow there anymore as it used to, and they have to move from that to another place. And that kind of data, it doesn't get to the system. So it's those migrants are still quite invisible.
Yeah, it's so sad, but also quite alarming to see that the already horrific figures that we have aren't really realistic in what's actually going on in the world. But look, I know you have a meeting on straight after this. So on the tail end, I just want to ask you, you've left some amazing knowledge and, it's been an absolute pleasure connecting with you. Is there anything else that you'd love to leave us in terms of wisdom or knowledge that we didn't potentially already touch on?
Yeah, it's been a natural chat. I'm not sure if we touched base on every topic you wanted to cover, but
doesn't really matter. Yeah. It's meant to go more like a conversation, isn't it?
Yeah, sure.
Look, man, after all that, where can we go to connect with you?
Well, you can follow me on Instagram. I think that's the internationally where people can find me the easiest, which is Rafael Duarte. At Rafael Duarte Photography.
And if you're scared of that spelling, I'll link it up in the show notes.
Yeah, Rafael Duarte Photography. You can find me there, and and also bambaleo.com, which is my production company. You can translate that to English, the website, and you can check my latest works, and you can learn more about what we've been doing here so far.
Perfect. Look, I'm really excited to see your new piece of work, and I'm definitely going to be keeping in touch to kind of keep up with all the amazing things you're doing in storytelling and journaling and all of that. But other than that, thank you so much for your time today, Rafael. Enjoy and go change Benjamin's nappy.
All right. Thank you, Tom. Thanks for having me, and good luck with your podcast there.
Yes, bro. Hi there. Welcome to the end of the episode. Thank you so much for listening the whole way through. I really appreciate you lending me your ears, and I appreciate you wanting to learn further and better yourself so that we can create a better planet together. Thank you, Rafael, once again for coming on and having this conversation. I had a great time and definitely learned a lot. I can't wait to see all the things you plan to create in the future, and I'll definitely be following your work. If you want to continue this conversation, I've left all of Rafael's links in the show notes to connect with him, or as well as us on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and all the things. If you are visually inclined, YouTube is a great way to listen and I guess watch these conversations. It's just basically our Zoom conversations. But if you like to put faces to names and voices, it is definitely a great way to go. That is all from me today. I'm going to keep this outro nice and short. Stay happy, eat plants. Peace.